when I was part of the Red Letter community workshop here. So I feel I'm interested.
Members of the gallery and to our viewers live streaming tonight's meeting. My name is Councillor Natalie Aboud and I'm the Mayor of Moreland City Council, and it is my pleasure to welcome you to tonight's special council meeting to hear submissions to the proposed 2019-2020 annual budget. Our meeting is being held on the traditional country of the Wurundjeri people, and I wish to acknowledge them as traditional owners. I would also like to pay my respects to their elders, past, present and emerging, and the elders from other communities who may be here today. I acknowledge that currently many Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people call Moreland home. I also acknowledge the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people never ceded sovereignty of their lands and have continuously cared for their country for over 60,000 years as the world's oldest living culture. Members of the gallery, please note this council meeting is being recorded and web streamed live to council's website and Facebook. This recording will also be available as video on demand. Gallery attendees are advised that they will be recorded during the meeting. Councillors, as a reminder that in line with the adopted councillor conduct principles as outlined in the Councillor Code of Conduct, councillors should ensure that they conduct themselves in the meeting with integrity, impartially exercise their responsibilities in the interest of the local community and not improperly seek to confer or advantage any person. This behaviour will support principles for leadership and good governance that secures public confidence in the office of councillor. Members of the gallery, in the event of an emergency or disruption, we may be required to take action to ensure the safety of attendees. Please follow the directions issued by council staff and security officers. Thank you for your understanding and cooperation. I'd like to introduce the other councillors in attendance. On my far right, Councillor Sue Bolton. The Deputy Mayor, Councillor Mark Riley. Good evening. To my left, Councillor John Kavanagh. Good evening. Councillor Dale Martin, Councillor Lambros Tapanos, and Councillor Oscar Yildiz JP. The officers in attendance tonight are, to my left, the Chief Executive Officer, Dr. Nerina De Lorenzo, the Director of Community Development, Arden Joseph, the Director of City Infrastructure, Grant Thorne, the Acting Director of City Futures, Philip Priest, the Director of Business Transformation, Sue Vucevic, the Director of Engagements and Partnerships, Joseph Tobacco, and the Executive Manager of Finance, Liz Rowland. Councillors, I note that Councillor Anna-Olivia Carly-Hannon is on leave of absence from the 11th of April until the 12th of August 2019, and also that Councillor Davidson is on leave of absence from the 13th of May 2019 to the 5th of June 2019. Councillors, are there any apologies from fellow councillors for tonight's meeting?
I was going to be half an hour late.
Thank you, Councillor Yildiz. And I think that Councillor Dorney is also running late, coming straight from work. So I'll now move on to disclosure of interests and conflicts of interest. Councillors, are there any interests or conflicts of interest to declare? Okay, so I'll now move to the submissions. Before I invite people to speak to their submission to the proposed budget, I'd like to note some important things. The purpose of tonight's meeting is to hear from people in support of a written submission. Councillors have received a copy of all submissions, so this will be an opportunity to expand. As we have a number of people to hear from tonight, each speaker will be asked to keep their comments to around 3 minutes. I will let you know when you're getting close to time. I'd like to remind all submitters and councillors, if we need to, we may ask questions to clarify what you're saying. Tonight is not an opportunity to debate the issues or to get into a discussion. I also note there will not be any decisions made at tonight's meeting. This is an opportunity for us to hear from you, and we will consider what we hear tonight along with the written submissions before we consider adopting the final council plan and budget. Councillors, so that we can hear from the members of the community in support of their submissions, do I have a mover to suspend standing orders? Councillor Riley and seconded by Councillor Kavanagh. Now, let's hear from you. So the first person I have on the list is Arshad Ibrahim, access to affordable basketball facilities. Oh, I do. Okay, sorry. So I'll now put the motion to suspend standing orders to the vote. All those in favour? Against? I declare that carried. Sorry about that. Okay, so is Arshad in the room by any chance? No, so we'll just move on. Funding, I know that former Mayor Mr Higginbotham is in the room, so if you'd like to come forward to talk to us about the funding for the Brunswick Beethoven Festival. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Mayor and Councillors. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. I've put in a written submission. The festival has been going, it's coming up for its 14th year. 90% of the money which comes in through the door is paid, or more than 90%, to the performers. It's, as I said, it's from a point of view of the performers, they love doing it. I've got a number of written testimonials about how much and important that it is from a chamber music point of view to the people of, or not only Moreland, but also the people of Victoria. It's a very, very important festival. Council was initially involved in the startup of the festival some years ago, but it's been a number of years since there's been any council support for this matter. Approximately 2/3 of the people who attend the festival come from Moreland, and we can look at that from figures that we've got. Between 45 and 50% of the ticketing is done through tri-booking and this through the RACV. The rest of it comes through the door. The question or the problem is that to sponsor a festival like this these days, you have to really spend a lot of money in terms of getting appropriate advertising. And that can be through all sorts of social media, Facebook and what have you. But it is expensive. You do need to have it properly put together. You need things like good IT people, you need graphic design, and all the things that go with it. And unfortunately, the festival doesn't have the capacity to do that. We have to buy it in, basically. So from that point of view, it's important that we do get funding. For the last 5 years, we've been getting funding through Performing Arts Moreland, but that organisation is closing down. And as a consequence, we need funding for this particular project. It is important. We have, as you may be aware, Moreland has more musicians and playwrights and what have you than anywhere else in the country. And from that point of view, it's important that we continue this. We have a number of outstanding musicians who are here in Moreland who perform at the festival. Not only they do it here, but they perform elsewhere throughout Australia and overseas. Both internationals come in and Australians who actually live overseas come to perform here. We're extremely fortunate to have something of this magnitude and of this particular festival. It's growing in patronage, its reputation is second to none, and it would be a great tragedy if we lost something of this order. I mean, as I said, one of the people who's been involved with it is the Director of Music at St Joseph's in West Brunswick, Anthony Halliday. You might ask, why is it important and what's the story about Beethoven and Brunswick? Well, it really relates to the fact that most probably the love of his life, the Contessa Josephina Brunswick, was actually, is a connection with this city. This is most probably the person whom he wrote The Immortal Beloved. So from that point of view, it is an important connection with this city.
Can I draw a line under that there? That's 3.5.
You can indeed.
Thank you so much, Mr Higginbotham. And I wonder if any of the councillors have any questions. Councillor Bolton?
Hi, I was wondering when the council stopped supporting the festival.
Financially?
Yeah, financially, sorry.
In about 7 years ago.
Okay, yeah.
And that was in relation to, we wished to get some use of the town hall, but when there was an emergency renovation of the town hall, we had to go elsewhere, and that was the last funding that we actually received, which was 7 years ago.
Yeah. Thank you. Councillor Riley? Oh, did you have another question?
No, that's
Councillor Riley?
Thank you. Just wondering, Mr Higginbotham, whether you participated in the annual arts programs and funding rounds. We just conclude. I think we've just opened and run some sessions on applying for funding of this kind of nature. So I'm just wondering whether you've been involved in that.
The festival needs ongoing funding. It's not seeking a grant. It needs ongoing funding. As it's been going, next year will be its 14th year, and it really does need, because it's an important part of the festival, it precurses both the Brunswick Street Party and the Brunswick Music Festival. It's an important part of this city's cultural program. And from that point of view, we have the view that it's something which council needs to be part of in terms of funding on an ongoing basis.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
So the next item on the list is improvements to Clifton Park and Gillan Oval, and I've got Ron Salberg and or Ian Moss, and another speaker who was to be advised, but you can advise me right now. Sure.
Thank you, councillors. Just to clarify, I represent Brunswick Cricket Club, and we're looking for funding to expand the nets at Gillan Oval. The sports club, of which Tim Purdy represents, is also looking for funding for the other facilities at Gillan Oval and at Clifton Park.
Yeah. And you're Ian Moss?
I'm Ian Moss.
Okay, good. Thank you.
So hopefully that clarifies where we go. So our submission is to expand the current cricket nets at Gillan Oval from 4 to 6 nets, and at the same time turn them into a multi-purpose facility that can be used by other sports and other teams, and do it in a safer way for both our players and for the community as a whole. The background is that we're a cricket club that's grown substantially over the last 10 years. We now touch in approximately 400 plus families on a regular basis. We have 15 junior teams, 3 of which are fully girls teams. We have 8, hopefully 9 senior teams, 3 of which are women's, hopefully 4 are women's teams. The women's been a joint venture with the Carlton Cricket Club. Our nets have been there for quite some time. They're used every night of the week and are very crowded. So the proposition, which has been discussed with council officers over the last 18 months or so, is to add 2 additional nets, take the hard netting for part of it down, replace it with a multi-purpose surface that could be used, for example, by futsal or by football club on a wet night for a little bit of work, and have pull-in, pull-out nets that are softer for use for the cricket club. The pull-in, pull-out nets are much safer, both for our bowlers and balls ricocheting around and for people who use the nets. It's something that's just becoming more and more urgent for us as we're more concerned about, or very concerned about the safety, but we run out of capacity. So on a junior training night, there's just more kids than we have nets available. So that's the submission.
Great. Thank you. Any questions? Can I just clarify? So when ultimately it would be a curtain, wouldn't it? Net curtain is pulled back, you can use the whole area for something else.
Yes,
okay, yeah.
That's the whole.
That's how I understood it. I just wanted to double check.
Yeah,
Great.
definitely.
Does anyone else have any questions?
Well, can I just ask, has this been costed and do we have a figure?
Yes, the cost, the full quote we've got in the order of 160,000.
Thank you. So now I'll move on. Tim, thank you, Tim. I didn't have your name here. Birch, did you say?
Yeah, so good evening, councillors. My name is Tim Purdy. It's P-U-R-D-E-Y. I'm the Secretary of the Brunswick Community Sports Club, which was established in 2011 as an umbrella organisation initially for Brunswick Cricket Club, Ian's club, and the football clubs, Brunswick Junior Football Club and what is now called Brunswick Football Club, which was formerly North Old Boys Amateur Football Club. And our senior football club, of which I'm a member, incorporates our women's teams as well. And obviously the Brunswick Junior Football Club has been booming, similar to what Ian's just outlined with the cricket club. We established that, Senior Football Club established that 9 years ago, 10 years ago. It's gone from 0 teams to 25 in that time. And there's a number of female teams, and we've also got, as I said, we've got senior women's football teams as well. Now, there's a little bit of background. In 2016, there was a funding, shared funding between the state government and this council for the installation of new bathrooms at Gillan Oval in the old 100-year-old grandstand, which has been most welcome. As part of that funding, there was money spent on a master plan. So jointly between state government and council, a master plan was paid for and developed. The master plan essentially deals with further stages in upgrading the change room facilities. So we've had the first stage of the players' bathrooms. There needs to be a new umpires room built, because at the moment they're working in 100-year-old facilities. There needs to be new training rooms built, and they're in the same position. There needs to be new flooring laid for teams. At the moment, the concrete base there is flaking away, and it's proving to be a health and safety issue. That's underneath the grandstand. That's all being costed out. It was 2016 costings, but it's part of the master plan. The other part of the master plan, which our clubs are keen to progress, is in the social club, which for all of our user clubs, which now I should say incorporates the Brunswick Netball Club, since their courts were built there. They have formally joined the Brunswick Community Sports Club. They share those facilities, and there's a need to expand the social club. And the master plan is that we leave the existing building. I'm not sure how familiar you are, councillors, with Gillan Oval, but we'll go upstairs and build a new, essentially, function room upstairs. And the existing concrete grandstand there would be glassed in, and that would provide facilities for coaches and the like, in accordance with AFL compliance guidelines. It was factored in that this might take some years. So in the meantime, the clubs have made deliberate attempts to continue to improve what we've got, including to the ground frontage. We've started that, but we want to continue that with the building of a veranda and other shade and decking.
Can I get you to just try and wrap it up?
Yes, sorry.
Time flies.
So what I suppose the punchline is, the state government last election, last year, committed $1 million towards this master plan. That was on the basis that the label were returned. That occurred. And in this year's budget, Victorian budget, it's buried away, but that we are in there. So what we are looking for is council to join in and contribute towards the master plan, which it has funded the drafting of.
Thank you. Tim, I'll see if there are any questions, and maybe you'll be able to keep talking. Are there any questions? Just wanted to double check. That's where the old croquet club, isn't it?
Yes, that's croquet plays in the corner. Yeah.
I just wanted to make sure I knew what I was thinking about.
Yes.
No other questions?
Okay.
Thanks, Tim.
Thank you, mate.
We've got the report, so we can have a good look at it too. I'd now like to ask Catherine Copsey from the Alliance for Gambling Reform to come forward.
Good evening. Thank you, councillors, for the opportunity to address you tonight. We wanted to come and take the opportunity to speak a little bit about the fantastic partnership that's come to date with Moreland and the Alliance for Gambling Reform, and looking ahead to the future and the next chapter of that. So it's really just an opportunity. I won't repeat the content of the submission, but as you would be aware, Moreland was one of the founding members of the leadership group of councils with the Alliance for Gambling Reform, coordinating and amplifying the voice of local government in addressing the need for reforms to reduce gambling harm in our state and in our country and in our local communities. It's been a really fruitful partnership to date. Just in the last year, there's been some amazing work coming out of Moreland. We, of course, had the Mayors Unite for Pokies Reform event at Parliament, which was spearheaded by their Mayor, Councillor Kavanagh. There's your ongoing leadership through exemplary policy and community awareness raising campaigns. You've also done fantastic sector-leading work on the Libraries After Dark program, which is ongoing. The recent standing up for your community in the successful overturning of the Glenroy RSL extra machines has really had a very good local impact and been a really great good news story in terms of local applications and councils standing up for community in the Commission. And of course, there's now emerging work to do with those organisations that are choosing to avoid entanglement in the gambling industry, like the Brunswick Hockey Club. So it's just been fantastic. Moreland's always been a leader in this space. It's a very fruitful space for collaboration across local government, and we're here tonight to thank you for the collaboration to date and support of that work, and look to the future, hopefully to align with what is happening at a local level and look further ahead so that we can plan and coordinate activities.
Thank you. Are there any councillors that have any questions? No?
Great, thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks for your submission. Soundproofing the Jessie Morris Community Hall, and I've got Rosemary Kerr's name written here.
Also a former mayor.
Oh, there you go. I'd like to acknowledge publicly that also two former mayors out in the gallery, let alone the former mayors that are sitting up here. Thank you.
Okay, Mayor, councillors and council officers, thank you for giving us the opportunity to come and put forward our case for funding to the Jessie Morris Community Hall. I'm Rosemary Kerr, those who don't know me, chairperson of the Committee of Management, and I have Mr Peter Wallace, who is a user of the hall and a member of the committee. Both have been associated with Jessie Morris for 20-odd years. Jessie Morris has been operating since 1958, when it was built as a youth facility by the community. It operated as a basketball stadium and table tennis facility for many years. It has become a community facility for social functions and used by groups running dance classes and other activities. Housing around the facility was all single dwelling. In the late 90s, the house on the left was demolished and 4 units built. Later, the house on the right was also demolished and 4 units built. The Committee of Management at that stage took on VCAT, but we lost. We knew that perhaps multi-purpose dwellings, units, may cause us problems in the future. All was well until 5 years ago, when the We have notified the police. I've looked at taking out intervention orders, but I think that's a bit inappropriate.
Rosemary, I just want to make sure that we don't get into a defamatory situation. And so maybe if you can talk to the submission, just so that we don't get into that grey area. Thank you.
Right. Loud music, and even during the day. The Committee of Management operate within the EPA regulations. Council has had a noise emission study done just recently. We haven't got the outcome of that yet. The hall booking agent gets phone calls and texts during the night abusing him. We are desperate for something to be done, as we cannot continue to manage the hall and be abused and threatened. I am asking the council tonight to consider putting $300,000 into the budget to soundproof at the back and side wall. I'd say that I'm not an expert. I say $3,000 because $300,000 because council have just generously done the Hadfield Community Hall, and it was in that approximate costing that that project was done. And I thank you because that was a wonderful project. But we are desperate. We are desperate for council to look at this facility, see what they can do so that it can be used as a community facility.
I'll have to get you to wrap up, Rosemary. We're at 4
Okay.
minutes, but I thank you very much for the submission.
Thank you.
We've got it all
and,
written down
we look
too, so
forward to
we can
working
have a look
together.
at it. Thank you. Thank you.
Rosemary, a
Please
question.
do. Yep.
Just have a question, Rosemary, for you. That's all right. Just the current hours of operation of the hall.
The hall is used 7 days a week.
Yeah. And what type of activities go on there?
On Monday, there's a dance group in the afternoon, and it's seniors dance group. Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, City Mission use the hall 4 days, and then we have dance classes in the afternoon, which Peter runs. On Saturday and Sunday, it's used by community groups. The Muslim community use it extensively for their functions, and we're just desperate for something.
Could we
Otherwise,
get an
have to
indication
close the
of
hall.
what time you're wrapping up?
That's right.
Of
that's
an
it.
evening?
Yeah, what time you finish of an evening?
Yeah.
It's 11 o'clock on the weekends, 8 o'clock during the week.
Okay, thank you so much. Thanks. That's
Okay.
excellent to know.
Are there any other questions for Rosemary? Yep, I just wanted to confirm, so Saturday, Sunday, is that Friday or Saturday 11 p.m. or Saturday, Sunday 11 p.m.?
Sunday's 8 p.m.
Yeah. So just,
Friday and Saturday,
yeah, okay.
11.
Okay,
But
so,
it's only used during the holidays.
yeah, sure.
On Friday and Saturday by community groups.
Yeah, and 8 p.m. all the other nights of the week. Okay, thank you for clarifying that. Okay, I'll now move on to Claire Heasley, adequate storage facilities at the netball courts. Investment in the Pascoe Vale outdoor pool, Vita. Recommission the public toilets at Richards Reserve and Coburg Velodrome, Chris.
Good evening, councillors. Thank you for giving me an opportunity to speak. I'm from Velodrome Events and the Coburg Velodrome. We represent the Coburg Cycling Club for the events that have been taking place. We first engaged council, I guess, 2014, and subsequently things have really, snowballed there, and we've hosted some amazing events, including Ability Fest, which is the disability charity fundraiser run by Dylan Olcott, Momo Fest, which is the Nepalese community group's Momo Dumpling Festival, and a whole spate of other activities. Challenge that we're facing at the moment is that we are being increasingly approached by community groups to host events at the velodrome, seeing it as an event space, but unfortunately the facilities just aren't available to take on events without having to bring in a bunch of extra infrastructure. Another evolution has been with the advent of the Richards Reserve Dog Park. There's an increased amount of local residents using the space, and there's just nowhere for them to go to the bathroom. So we recently ran an outdoor cinema series in partnership with local primary schools and other community groups at the velodrome. Again, that's something which may have only had 200 or 300 people per screening. It raised money for local schools and promoted sustainability as well. But for each of those events, the cost to bring in toilets every time kind of undermines the whole exercise. So we're hoping to look at getting the existing toilet block at Richards Reserve, which is a part of the Coburg Velodrome facility, brought up to scratch. It's not a huge work to be undertaken. The quotes we've received from Yarra Water and from other plumbing companies probably sits in the $25,000 to $30,000 mark. But it would make a huge difference in terms of the kind of activations that can take place there. That's pretty much it. Something that's probably worth bringing up is we've partnered with the Coburg Cycling Club to install the new kiosk, which is taking place right in the middle of the velodrome with viewing decks for racing. that's something that would really benefit also from having water accessible out there. I'm not too sure, those of you who've been out there probably are aware that over the years it's slowly sort of, maintenance has disintegrated out there from lack of funding that these cycling clubs had, in addition to lack of use until we sort of started activating it as a community space. And there was actually a really amazing plumbing system under there with sprinkler systems and the rest, which has basically fallen to the wayside. So we're hoping that this kind of activation will help bring it back up to speed and something that we can progressively build on in the future.
Great. I have a question from Councillor Martin. Councillor Riley.
Sorry. It's just checking I mean, they're old toilets, but are they wheelchair or disability accessible?
That's something, no, they aren't currently, and that's something we'd love to get at. You know, it is kind of ironic in the sense that we host the world's only accessibility event, music festival, and that doesn't exist out there. And look, there are contributions as a private company we'd be more than willing to make towards getting the facilities up to scratch. You know, I know that Gillan would personally be able to reach out to any number of providers and get them to sponsor something along those lines to give more wheelchair access as well. So, yeah, for sure.
Any other questions? Can I just ask how many toilets are in the toilet block?
There's a urinal bank, which is probably good for about 20 odd people. And there within the female toilets, there's 4 cubicles. In the men's toilets, there's 2. You know, it was back in the 70s when the velodrome was in its heyday. You can see the live broadcast on Channel 7, all the stuff on the YouTube, which was crazy, the amount of people who were actually visiting that space. So the facilities are in really good nick. It's just the plumbing that needs attention, and I think probably the installation of a time-activated door that would lock after 8 p.m. or 9 p.m. or whatever else it is. But, you know, it's all ready to go, basically.
Okay.
Great.
Thank you very much.
Cool, thank you.
Ned McDonald. Conduct a traffic census of Glen Lyon road use. Tony Weir. Thanks, Tony. Fix the storm water flooding on Saxon and Michael Street.
Sorry, I'm kind of fighting off a cold. I don't think it's the flu. So, but if I start coughing, please excuse me. Yeah, sorry. So I'm here to represent a number of the residents, businesses in and around Michael Street, Saxon Street. A number of the people who well, not here tonight, but are signatories to the submission, which is basically a copy of a letter that they signed back in December, I think, last year, in support of putting in, or the council taking action to do something about the street flood, repeated street flooding. So this all the main kind of thing that happened to bring this to attention to council last year was the Melbourne Cup Day floods, which were probably the worst in the last 6 years. But that was just an example of the repeated kind of chronic flooding that has been occurring in this area that I've been aware of for the 6 years I've been living there, because my building keeps getting flooded on an annual basis, like severe flooding, but which residents and businesses in the area tell me has been happening there for more than 50 years. So it's a long-standing issue, just made worse by the fact that there are now hundreds of people living in that area, in that street. And there are, I think, 4 new developments that have already been approved for construction in that current flood zone as well. So I'd like to, on behalf of the businesses and people, strongly support the work that council has done and the project that's being proposed in the budget. Council's been very helpful in doing the work. They presented us with a plan for installing surge tank storage under Michael Street. We had our own water engineer who's been helping us the last few years look at that, and they were very supportive of that project, saying that they thought that given the very extensive amount of water that ends up in that area, that a project of that magnitude is what is needed. And really that would be kind of the minimum of what is needed to fix the level of flooding there. So residents and businesses are very supportive of the project and would ask that councillors approve it as is. The concern being, I think council officers said that it hadn't been fully costed when we met several weeks ago. and they were thought it could be scaled back depending on the final costing. Our concern would be that if it does get scaled back, that the flooding is going to continue. So that's the gist of it. But we're very supportive of what council has proposed, but that it be approved as currently planned and not rolled back. I understand it's quite a bit of money, but relative to, just for example, the building I live in has incurred over $200,000 in costs in the last 5 years that have been paid, including $50,000 in costs from the Melbourne Street flooding event, which also resulted in an elderly man falling in a stormwater drain and being severely injured or potentially even dying last November. So obviously it's the costs. The cost of the project should be weighed against the ongoing costs that are already being incurred, plus this human safety factor.
I'll just have to. I'm going to take that pause and to say thank you. And,
okay.
Well, yeah, just because of the time.
Sure.
And unless there's anything you really think you've forgotten, but I'm sure there are a few questions as well. Councillor Bolton?
I've got one question. Did you get any indication from the council officers about what it might be scaled back to if it doesn't go through in full? And also I noticed there's another budget submission in relation, by separate people, in relation to flooding on the upfill bike path in that exact location near Michael Street.
Right. So on the first question, no, we didn't get an indication of. We were just told that it hadn't been fully costed, and that if it came in at more expensive than as a more expensive cost than what had been proposed in the budget, then it could get scaled down to, to that. So we don't know. So obviously that's the concern, that if it does get scaled down, how much would it get scaled down? And because it's extensive work, it would be a shame if it was half done and then the flooding just continues. And I'm not aware, the upfield bike path in that area floods. When we flood, it floods too, and that water ends up in our building typically, because it flows straight into Michael Street. There's no drainage really along the upfield train line or the bike path. The water that comes off the train line just flows down into Michael Street and Saxon Street corner. Which I guess is an issue maybe Vic Track should probably think about too. They're basically using council stormwater drains as their storage, as their drainage system. Yeah.
Thank you, Tony. Are there any other questions? No? Okay.
No, excellent.
Thanks,
guys.
Pauline O'Brien, invest in the seniors exercise park.
Thank you. Madam Mayor and councillors, I feel like a Johnny come lately. I represent U3A Moreland, and I'm almost embarrassed by the tiny amount of money we're asking for compared to everyone else. I'll tell you who we are to start with. We've been going 4 years. We're a group for retired and semi-retired people over 50. Most of our members are over 60, but we allow over 50 to allow older unemployed to get involved with us. We provide over 30 activities a week for a cost of $45 membership a year. We're a totally volunteer organisation. We do get some support from council, as in other seniors clubs we get $2,000 a year because we have over 60 members. One of the things we're really aware of is trying to keep our members lively and active, but this submission is not just about our members. Last year we put a proposal, well, we didn't know the process. We knew, we're only 4 years old, right? So in fact we put a submission into Grant and Arden for Pick a Project to try and get a seniors exercise park. As you may be aware, Moreland has, well, you would be aware, I mean, we've got 28,000 people over 60 in Moreland, which is a small city, really. And of that, the council puts a lot of money into 10 or 15%. That is, you'd have an excellent home care service, right? But the rest of us, it's not a strong program you've got for us, but we'd love to see it improve. And this is one way we think it could improve. We've specifically asked for around $40,000. Now, we didn't cost this. This is a figure that came from the National Ageing Research Institute, who have developed a wonderful set of equipment that, unlike many older equipment for older people's exercise, this equipment set they're suggesting is flexible, it can be developed over time, it can get more and more complex, but it's easy to use. At the same time, they've developed a program people can follow. They're willing to train people from seniors clubs so that they're able to lead others into using the equipment. So we think it's a great idea. It's an idea that also has been mentioned by many other groups in the consultation on for the aged and wellbeing framework. Now, that framework you're aware of, but it's not in place yet. We don't want to wait till it's in place for a very good reason. As we pointed out in our submission, you've got redevelopment going on at City Oval, and that, as I understand it from the response we got back last year from council officers, includes gathering the water from Coburg Seniors Club, and the water being harvested is to be stored in tanks under the wonderful open area that's there currently. Now, it's a wonderful time to save money, combine two projects at once, and put in this exercise equipment. I hope if you go ahead with it, you'll see it as a pilot project, because you've got a fantastic park redevelopment program going on that aims to get all members, all Moreland people within 500 metres of a park. I know you'll be putting in equipment for the little ones. Well, let's think about the big ones. Well, we're not as big as we used to be, so we're
Can I call that a wrap? We're nearly at
just
4, but
one thing.
Yes?
It would be of benefit to the whole community, because
Indeed.
fancy being able to take your grandkids down there, play with them on that lot, let them come and play with you a bit on theirs.
Alternatively,
$40,000
fancy
not a
being
lot.
able to take your granny down.
Exactly.
Councillor Riley?
Thanks, Maureen. Pauline, rather. Thanks for the submission. I'm glad you managed to get in on time. It's great. I'm just wondering whether you've already selected a site, and it's a big city. So I'm interested in how flexible you are around where this goes. But I'm also interested in the fact that with the elevation of the upfield line, whether it could be equipment that might actually go in underneath the railway line, because we were looking to activate that space. So I'm just wondering whether you'd be disposed to that kind of location as well.
If it was successful, I'd like to see these all over Moreland, just as we have parks for equipment for younger people. I think we have to be aware of people being able to get there by public transport. Now, I forgot to say, we've also got with us here Gino from Australian Pensioners' Voice this evening. I'm sure we'll get lots of other support if we ask them. We're thinking that because it could happen now as part of a current project, and the sooner it happens, the better, because we can get this assistance from NARI now. But, yeah, Mark, we'd be happy to see it anywhere that has good public transport.
Very good.
I mean,
cheers.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Are there any other questions? No? Okay, thank you. So that's all of the submitters that I had scheduled for this evening. So I'd like to thank you all for taking the time to attend tonight and to expand on your written submissions. And councillors, before we consider the report, could I have a mover to resume standing orders, please? Councillor Tapanos and Councillor Riley seconding. All those in favour? Against? I declare that carried. So, councillors, I now need a mover in relation to the officer report, submissions to the proposed 2019-2020 annual budget. Thank you, Councillor Tapanos. Councillor Bolton, sorry, Councillor Yildiz, I just saw Councillor Bolton as a seconder. So I'll put that to the vote. All those, sorry, would you like to speak to this, Councillor Tapanos?
No, I think it's fine.
Councillor Bolton?
Yeah, thank you.
Sorry about that.
Thank everyone for their submissions.
Thank you. So I'll put that to the vote. Are there any other councillors who would like to speak to the motion? No. I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? Against? I declare that carried. I remind everyone that Council will consider what we've heard and all the written submissions before our June 24th, 2019 Council meeting. And at that meeting, we intend to consider adopting the 2019-2020 annual budget. And as always, that meeting will be open to the public and the community is welcome to attend or view on the live streaming service. Councillors, I'd like to declare the council meeting closed and thank you all for attending and thank you to the viewers at home.
Thank you. Please.